Hi, everyone. Number one Marmaduke fan here. And today I'm joined by two guests who I have known since before I was number one Marmaduke fan. So I'll introduce them one at a time. First, we've got Matt C., who was a guest on my. Whoop, hold on, I hear an echo. Sorry. There we go. I think it's working. All right. So Matt C. was a guest on my artist night yesterday, and we're going to talk a little bit about his webcomic, Kyrie. So say hi, Matt.
Howdy, howdy.
And we also have Paul Cox, the creator of Webtoons and Dad versus Nature.
Reftunes.
Reftunes. What did I say?
Webtoons.
Webtoon. Oh, you'd be rich if you were the creator of Webtoons.
Oh, that'd be great.
All right, so Reftunes. The secret origin story of this is I used to have like a cartoon Calvinist Twitter account years ago that I used for a while, and then I took a break from Twitter. But I knew both of you from that time, and now that I've got like this comic book channel, I wanted to have some of you guys on. So this is neat, kind of like a little bit of a Twitter reunion for me. So let me think. You're both cartoonists. You're both kind of in reform circles on Twitter. And you're both doing some like really interesting kind of different stuff. You each have your own style. So Matt, maybe I'll start with you because you're on the left on my screen and I'm OCD. So I read Kyrie this week, and I was really, really impressed.
Thanks.
So I'll probably have a chance to share some of my thoughts, but could you just tell us a little bit about what was the creative genesis of Kyrie? Like, where did this come from?
Well, I tried and failed to tell other stories, to make other comics for a number of years. And I think I just kind of boiled down to what sort of thing could I work on for years that I wouldn't really mind if it took that long.
Huh.
And I think, I mean, really, like Indiana Jones in ancient Rome just kind of clicked for me.
Yeah.
So,
gosh.
yeah.
Yeah, right. Because as I was reading it, I was just thinking, oh wow, dope adventure story. Like I can see the big budget Hollywood adaptation of this, but you've also got this real depth of interest in historical languages. Like you have them quoting Hebrew, and Marcus is a scholar of Greek, I think, right? So you're really getting to pepper a lot of like interesting Roman, biblical, and the rest of the ancient world into this.
Well, I always thought it was fun when there were historical dramas and it's in the past for us as readers, for as audience viewers, but then they're talking about things that are ancient to both them and us. That's kind of a fun juxtaposition where for them there are things that are contemporary that to us still seem old, but they're acting like this is the new thing.
Yeah.
And they're looking back to like they're talking about stuff that's still even more ancient, and I don't know, that sort of thing was kind of the spark for me to kind of play around with this story.
So something that stood out to me about your drawing style, even before I read Kyrie, was you kind of combine like little details in like the clothing, like the wrinkles of all the robes and such. I think it's a good fit for history comics. And then the other thing that stood out to me was your coloring. Like you see for your covers, especially, you seem to use like some historical details and like some bright single colors. Like, do you have a school of thought for coloring, or do you have any painters you look at for color inspiration?
Cowboy Bebop is the number one thing for the covers. I always love the idea of just going monotone with each character, but seeing how many different color palettes I can kind of come up with for that. Just kind of like the opening crawl for Cowboy Bebop.
Yeah.
And I'm also not terribly good at oh gosh, I had an art professor. This was like the end of my junior year. Go through my paintings, and he like met me in the hallway one day. He's like, "Hey, I don't mean to be like, don't take this the wrong way, but are you colorblind?" So,
now have you improved since then?
I like to think so. I mean, a lot of times, like I'm just kind of stealing from. Originally, it was Steven Universe and stuff like that, but I think I've kind of drifted into. Eventually, you kind of find something that you like that you don't have to reference so much. And as far as clothing goes, that was totally anatomy, like stylized anatomy, is not a strength of mine. So that's one of the reasons I even picked this period. Was this is when people, like, it's ancient Rome, but if you pick the first century, you still see a lot of skin. By the third century, they're wearing long sleeve shirts and pants and stuff like that,
Huh.
so I can kind of cover things up. And I was like, I like drawing cloth, and I can hide anatomy that I didn't understand very well yet. So that's kind of where that comes from.
Rob Liefeld, stealth work there. Well, every good artist does that. Like Jack Kirby would draw like the detailed panel, and then he'd switch to drawing like, you know, the series of much more simple panels, or he'd put dialogue over the complex details. Right? That's just being smart.
It's a good technique.
Yeah, you got to know what your strengths are. Yeah, and your weaknesses, I guess. So, yeah. Isn't that that's like a style thing, right? Like your style comes from what you fail at, I guess. So.
Yeah, I think about it as like pointing yourself in the right direction. Like I know what my weaknesses are an artist, and it's that like I'm either like super detailed and fastidious, and I spend a month on it, or I draw it in like two minutes. So I kind of have to like point myself or get myself in the right attitude to kind of like find a happy middle ground between those two extremes.
It's very true. I can relate.
So Paul, I want to talk about your work a little bit. So I knew of your work just from like, you make the kind of work that I think a lot of people on Christian Twitter especially just like to share. You've got kind of a charming, but Calvin and Hobbes influenced style, I think. But
Yeah.
and in your sense of humor too, and like your family strips. So you will have like, kind of like like interesting moments from church history, interesting quotes, but you'd also do like some things that like for some people in my audience might be a little bit more inside baseball, like making fun of Dr. James White's Coogee sweater, that kind of stuff.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So how long have you just been interested in like Reformed apologetics and Reformed Christian Twitter?
Oh, Reformed Christian Twitter. Oh, that's funny. I don't know. I have to think. It's been, I don't know, maybe 4 years, 3-4 years. I'm not sure. I don't even remember when I first stumbled across Reformed Christian Twitter. I feel like I just kind of fell into it, and then look, there's another guy. There's another guy. There's another guy.
Yeah.
Calvinist Batman. Calvinist whatever. There's all these guys.
For you to start, I guess, because you
What's
kind of
that?
blew up. Like I've known about you for about 3 or 4 years, so I guess you blew up pretty fast. You kind of hit that scene.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. I started RefTunes in the end of 2017. And then it just kind of blew up from there. Before that, I was doing like Dad versus Nature, and I got in on like, I did the Geneva Joe character for the Reformed Pub, and they were allowing me to post Dad versus Nature on their website that they had.
That's a big deal.
But yeah, that was kind of my, well, and I started out doing those some head drawings for missional wear and stuff like that, and so that's kind of where my art, I think, around like 2016, 15 or 16 or so is when I started doing like the heads for missional wear and the that other character design, Geneva Joe. And that's kind of when I started getting into like the Reformed Twitter sphere and the Reformed Facebook and all that stuff. And I think in 2017, I just thought, well, wouldn't it be funny to have like a kind of a Calvin and Hobbes style comic strip with a bunch of reformers and and see where that goes. So the first one I did was that Martin Luther one, where he has the trick-or-treaters behind him, and that was the first one I did, and then it just kind of grew from there.
So something I appreciate about kind of both of you, this is consistent, is you both seem to have like this deep reading that you bring to your comics. So for Paul, it's all of these like, quotes throughout church history that you're kind of spotting and then trying to find sort of, simple, I call them like lyrical illustrations, because it kind of visually conveys the idea of the quote. And like any child would be able to understand like what you're trying to convey. And I think that takes like some thinking, like, because in order to illustrate something that way, you have to understand the thrust of it. So you have like I think of you as kind of like I wish there were like Sunday school books, right? Completely full of like ref tunes. And then for Matt, I see it for you in kind of like sort of the depth of like all the historical details you had. So what's interesting is you're kind of applying it different ways. Like Matt's bringing it into a fictional setting, and Paul, you're bringing it into kind of a more of a literal setting.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. You take it, Paul.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, that's pretty much exactly it, I guess. Yeah. What I do is I draw from what I'm learning at the time. So if I'm reading through some John Owen, it's going to inspire what I do for RefTunes, or occasionally I'll just find quotes that create like a really interesting mental image in my head, and I'll use those. But a lot of the times it's things that I'm reading through, like the Pilgrim's Progress. I tried to do that children's book, and
yeah,
I was reading through that, and it was just so inspiring. I wanted to make a kids book about it, and some people pushed me into doing that, and I'm glad they did, and it was fun.
Is that your Kickstarter project?
Yeah, I did a Kickstarter that failed, but I'm in talks with a publisher right now.
I felt bad about that because I knew of you, and then I go to check out like all your work, and I just realized, oh dang it, I just missed this. Well, I'd encourage you to give it a shot. Like I had this team on. It was the writer for Sporkman, and he's had like 2 or 3 failed attempts to get his Kickstarter launched, and he's learned a lot about kind of like the behind the scenes aspect of funding a comic. He's actually combining a Kickstarter and an Indiegogo to fund it because he wanted to like broaden his audience of people he could potentially reach. So I'd be interested in like mea culpa. I missed the first one, but I'd be interested in definitely having you back to talk up future projects you do.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
The only thing of yours I haven't read, I think I read everything on your site, but I haven't read Post Tenebris Lux yet. Could you kind of give us a pitch on what Post Tenebris Lux is about?
Oh yeah, that was something I did in 2016, I believe. So what I did was I did a 16-page comic book about Martin Luther from the time he let's see. Oh, well, it starts out with Jan Hus and his prophecy about Martin Luther, quote unquote, or whatever.
The goose or whatever.
The goose, yeah, the goose quote about Martin Luther. But then it goes up until the time when Martin Luther nails his thesis to the door. So it's just 16 pages of that. And then there's caricatures from church history, from people from church history, filling up the rest of the book. And that was 2 years worth of Inktober projects.
Oh, wow.
That I just put together into a book.
That's right. You participate in Inktober a lot. I've noticed that.
Yeah, I love that. I love Inktober.
Maybe like I think a lot about like what I can learn from an artist, and I have like a weirdly large audience of kids because I played Deltarune right as it was going popular. So now I've had like all these people who've stuck around my channel because of that. But something I've noticed that I think like younger artists could learn from you is finding a good niche of people that where you're really passionate about something and you make work about that passion. And then I don't think it'd be possible to check out like Reformed Apologetics Facebook pages or Twitter without seeing your work come up at some point. So I think there's something that anyone could learn from in how you did that.
Yeah, yeah, I feel like I kind of fell into a niche, but a lot of advice I hear is that you need to find a niche and create art for that niche. And I feel like I've kind of found that with what I'm doing in RefTunes.
Oh yeah.
And I'm always looking for other niches.
So what are some future plans you might have? I know you're thinking about your Pilgrim's Progress book. Are any considerations of like starting a new campaign in the future, maybe this year, maybe next year? Any other projects in comics you want to pursue?
Oh, there's countless projects. I always have things in my head that I want to do, I'm sure a lot of other artists. But I don't know if I'll pursue another Kickstarter for the Pilgrim's Progress. I mean, if this publisher is able to pick it up, I'll just go with them for that and focus on some other things.
One thing about Kickstarter, like obviously I hope your book deal comes through, but if it doesn't, one of the nice things about Indiegogo is that and Marmo, correct me if I'm wrong, I haven't done it before, but I hear that you get to keep if it doesn't fund to your anticipated goal, you still get the amount that you did raise.
It depends on whether you do a fixed goal or a flexible goal. So some people do a flexible goal, so that if they're like $10 short of their goal, then they can say, okay, we can still make this book work. I think most people say they prefer a fixed goal because it kind of forces them to sit down and actually plan. Here's the absolute minimum I need to get it funded. So they like plan for, I have to have this much just to get the book printed, right? But then everything else after that is a stretch goal, and they kind of like they shoot towards that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I was looking into Indiegogo before doing Kickstarter, but I was familiar with Kickstarter. I used Kickstarter for Post Tenebras Lux. And so I just went with that. But that's good to know.
And Kickstarter still does have like a pretty sizable, like it's the first crowdfunding site. I think Indiegogo just gave people like some flexible options that, it at least makes it worth looking into. It does have its own definite advantages. Like you can have a store after the fundraising period stops. People can come on late if you want to keep buying the book.
Yeah, I noticed that. I think that's how I got the Bigfoot Bill graphic novel from Doug TenNapel.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, has everyone here ordered Bigfoot Bill?
Yeah, I just did a review of it, Paul.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. What do you think?
I don't have mine yet. Okay, Paul, have you gotten yours?
Yes, I got mine. I haven't finished reading it yet, though.
All right, spoil everything for me.
It's good so far. I like it.
Yeah. It's crazy because I was expecting, this is the only thing I'll say, and this doesn't really, I don't really think of this as a spoiler. I was expecting a big emotional, because Doug's kind of an emotional guy. I expected him to kind of punch you at the end with something kind of heartbreaking and emotionally compelling. Right. He puts a lot of that, honestly, at the beginning, which is interesting. He kind of wins you over with a lot of really, just pleasant character development. A lot of cute whimsy and serious moments. That all happens in the first third, and then he just kind of, actions you away into insanity. The rest of the book. It's pretty fun. Like I'd never read any of his books before.
Wow. So. I completely missed out on Earthworm Jim as a kid. My first exposure to Doug was Cardboard, and I was so impressed by Cardboard because I think he was pulling from maybe like Chesterton. He was just doing like this all of Cardboard is like this really interesting homage to like a child's imagination and being creative. And I like what he does with like his villains. Like he'll set up his villain as like this awful person, but then like that won't be the end of their story. His hero and his villain will both go on a journey. So I think he really nails characterization. And he once was having some Twitter back and forth where someone said, "Hey, all your drawings look alike." And he said, "Well, I emphasize fluidity and elasticity in my drawing." And then it was kind of clicked for me that that's what makes Doug TenNapel's style Doug TenNapel's style. All of his characters are really what's the line work like? He's emphasizing kind of like the fluidity and the weight of the character over like, oh, they have a skeleton and the skeleton is, you know, precisely measured to be exactly this long in proportion to this part of the skeleton.
Oh,
you know?
Yeah. Yeah, he focuses on the gesture of the characters rather than the actual structure. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. And that helps kind of captures their weight, their feel. You got to exactly gesture drawing.
Mm-hmm.
Paul, I kind of be interested. So you work as a professional illustrator. Like people can commission you to do illustrations, and you've got some samples of that kind of work in your portfolio. What's your history? Were you an art student? Did you kind of like teach yourself how to draw?
Yeah, I went to school. Well, I've been drawing since I was 3. So up until I went to school for art, I was just drawing on my own, just learning my own stuff. But I went to school at Spring Arbor University in Michigan, and I got just a general art degree because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I had a focus in drawing, so everything there was it was training. They called it classical training in classical art. So we do drawing and painting and kind of focusing on studying like the masters and stuff. But it was kind of my junior year, senior year. I kind of got into comics a lot more, and I just felt like I just really wanted to do comics. And my professor was like, well, you shouldn't do that because you'll end up living in a garbage can and begging for food. So I didn't take his advice, and I pursued. So my entire senior show was like a comic, like one big comic from beginning to end, made out of large scale paintings, like
wow,
4 feet by 5 feet paintings of comic art. This was back in 2006.
Yeah.
And that was for my senior art show. And then after that, I tried getting art jobs, but I couldn't. So the first job out of college, I was working at a place called the Deli Dog House, making hot dogs for people, and which was fine. It paid the bills, and then I went on from there to be a screen printer, and moved from that job to a technical artist for a company that did scroll saw patterns. So I would design scroll saw patterns for their customer base. But then I got laid off from that job, and that kind of forced me into freelance illustration, which is where I've been since 2009.
Nice.
So that's kind of the short version.
And Matt, what about you? What's your background in art? What art student or non-art student?
Definitely art student.
All right.
For better or for worse. Let's see. So I went to Ringling College of Art in Florida, and it was to work in film or something, or I guess like to be like a parasite on the back of animation. Like I wasn't good enough to animate, but I wanted to be kind of in that world of storytelling.
Yeah.
Never read a comic book other than a couple Calvin and Hobbes, as one does. And kind of got introduced to cheaper forms of storytelling than film through like roommates and stuff like that. They were showing me comics like the Flight anthologies and stuff like that, and manga, and that kind of opened things up for me. So I've always had a day job doing art, but and I've worked at like more cartoony places, and then more like nowadays I do more medical art actually, but there's always been like a side hobby that I kind of slowly kind of nurtured into something that I kind of work on habitually, which is comics. So yeah, that's me. Yeah.
Do you guys both know POTUS Thump?
Yeah. I've been watching him.
Okay, Matt knows him. Do you know him, Paul?
No.
Okay, he's a doctor who also does like professional comic book illustration. So I saw him.
Huh.
I saw him at first because he did like this children's book about Donald Trump as a bunny rabbit, and then he started doing like his own comic projects and getting them funded. So I've just always been interested that he somehow juggles being a doctor with apparently like cranking out comic book after comic book. He's really doing well.
It's funny.
Well, I think it's really nice. That's part of I mean, it's one of the many great things about comics right now in 2019 is that you get to hear a lot of stories of people who are like unapologetically not doing art for a day job.
Yeah.
As well as people who are. And there's just like there's many ways, there's many routes to storytelling, to doing art for a living. You can do it as a side project. You can just kind of do it for fun and never make any money with it, and that doesn't matter because your day job is, you know, putting a roof over your head.
Yep.
Or you can really go
Right.
for it and try and marry the two together. And there's nothing to there's no route that's worse than the other, you know.
Right.
Really, which is not something I was taught at art school. So
Yeah, same here.
yeah.
So I'd be kind of interested. I started in a school that had a real technical foundation. I think Matt, you or it might have been Paul. You might have mentioned having like that kind of foundations in classical.
Yeah.
So I had some of that, and then I went for I went for a master's degree in art history, and that was a lot more focused on kind of like maybe the technical theory side of it, as well as like, you know, 21st century theory. So did you guys get any chance to be exposed to that in art school, and did that like shift your thinking at all, or at least just kind of like make you aware of maybe like the culture's view on art?
Exposed to what now? The
Kind of like well, not just art history, but like the theory of modern art or the theory of postmodern art. Did that come across in your schooling at all?
I'm trying to remember. It's been a long time. I remember talking about. I remember my professors talking about how much they hated postmodern art.
Interesting. All right.
And that's a lot of.
And that's coming from someone like I mean, you weren't studying illustration per se, right? It was just
No, not at all. It was just art.
Oh.
So I had art history. I had drawing, painting, 2D, 3D art. I even had a classical sculpture class.
Wow.
It was just all over the place. They basically wanted to train us to be teachers.
But
which isn't a bad direction to go.
Practice,
No, it's not. But if you wanted to do something other than that, it was kind of looked down upon.
I've always thought we need like the equivalent, like people will joke like, why don't they teach kids how to do their taxes in high school?
Yeah.
I've always thought we needed like the equivalent of a like how to actually like how to buy a Subway sandwich with what you make on art, you know, 101, like the business side of things.
Yeah. I always thought it would be nice to have a how to market yourself as an artist class, but so I've learned all my stuff from just YouTube and researching it on my own.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So
not just like YouTube for the like making art side of things, but also for like getting your art in front of people's eyes.
For marketing, yeah.
Huh. What are some sources you found helpful for marketing your art on YouTube?
Oh, let's see here.
Yeah, do tell.
Let me pull up my subscription list. Let's see. It's just a handful of things. Let's see. I like to watch what's his name? Well, Brian G. Johnson. He's got some good videos about a lot of them have to do with like YouTube marketing, but I've been able to take some of their strategy, and some of them talk about like social media marketing. So I've been able to pick and choose some of the strategies that they give. So Brian G. Johnson, Roberto Blake, there were some other guys. I must not. Oh, the video influencer guys. They have some good stuff. And then like for other things like story structure and stuff, I like watching Doug TeNaples, some of his old videos, and Brandon, forget his last name. He did the Green Monk. Brandon Dayton, he's got some good stuff.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, just a lot of times I don't subscribe to him. I just kind of look up certain things that I'm looking for at the time, and come up with some really good resources. So you just gotta Google it.
I also think literally reading like ad agency people talk about their work, it can be helpful because they're all about like, how do I convince someone to buy something they didn't know they wanted?
Right.
So it's all about like finding the person to make the sale to, convincing them that they need to buy this thing, and then convincing them to keep coming back and buying it. And like I learned about some of that just like through doing graphic design work for business, right? Because I've got to make the product look nice. And then I ended up learning like a lot of good stuff for like, oh, okay, I got to sell myself as an artist too, because I have a product.
Yeah, definitely. You got to know where to push your stuff too. So it helps to, yeah, go ahead.
Well, it seems to me like those that are most successful with marketing themselves through videos are the ones who are selling themselves as like a personality, I guess.
Yeah.
Like that's who's like a transparent. It doesn't mean like maybe early YouTube was like about selling yourself as like wacky and high production value kind of videos, but now it's like who's the most seems like the most approachable, I guess, and transparent sort of person that you feel like you're getting to know as you watch, subscribe.
Mm-hmm.
And those people sell me, and I think a lot of people on their products down the line.
Like, can you produce a lot of, and like my big problem has been like, I always have like enough ideas to do a video a day, but like, how do I balance that? Like, cruddying out a video versus actually like making something I can be proud of. Because there does seem to be like a heavy emphasis on YouTube to like push people to make quantity of work, not quality of work. But if you can do it, and if you do have like enough thoughts, like I think the problem is like, do you want to be an artist or do you want to be a podcaster? But I think that people are interested in hearing artists talk about their work. So there definitely are ways that you can combine that, where if people are just interested in the making of art and the production of art, then you can't, I think there is a way to like kind of weaponize your reading and your research into art while building up your own artistic persona, I guess. So talk to me a little bit about what you guys actually do on YouTube. Like, what kind of content do you find speaks to people?
Oh gosh. Well, I honestly, at least for me, like I'm finding that collaboration streams like this one actually tend to work out a lot better because I think I don't know if it's the algorithm or it's just like how we use YouTube. We don't kind of browse by topic. You know what I mean? So we're not just kind of like searching for artists and just kind of scrolling and then finding a stream and watching it. Like we're already kind of plugged in to what we know, and then whatever is being like the 5 or 6 things that's being recommended on the right hand side. So in order to find new people or for people to find us, I feel like you gotta work as a team. I think
network.
Yeah. You have to network. Otherwise, you're just one more island, out in the sea of people that are getting 10 views, 20 views.
Maybe speaking of that, you guys should check out Matt Reese of the Matriarchy. He's been joining us in the chat. He says he has to dip out. This has been a neat conversation. I will have to check out the replay. So you guys should definitely hit up Matt Reese and join the Matriarchy sometime. He's got some really interesting thoughts on like the roots of story that you guys might click with.
Oh, cool.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a cool guy.
That's the interesting about YouTube is like there's an incentive to like make content and engage with a lot of people. So if you're like promoting a comic, right, and you can't get like superdupercomicbooks.com to pay attention to you, there's going to be a wealth of people who are just like saying, yeah, I need to make a video today. Come on, we'll talk about your comic book,
Yeah, there's people interviewing and there's people being interviewed. I mean, you're right. There's a lot of people that are, it's a win-win. You can find enough people, I guess, to really hang out with. And it's another opportunity to just be approachable, be a real human being, I guess, with people.
Paul, I asked Matt earlier. You mentioned that you've learned about marketing by like watching stuff on YouTube. Have you found any success like making your own YouTube videos to build your platform?
I've started trying to make my own YouTube videos. So mainly what I just do for the YouTube videos is just do a live drawing. I'll just draw live and then just talk. If people come into the chat, I'll just talk with them. Because I'm terrible at coming up with things to talk about and asking questions and stuff. So it helps. It like a setting like this is a lot better for me than just me on my own. So I enjoy being with other people when I'm doing this.
It is a different skill. Yeah, like interviewing, you have to like be a journalist, right? And like ask all these neat follow-up questions. And then like convos are a little bit more. So what are you guys interested in? You know?
Right.
Like I've been drawing like a Charles Spurgeon kind of riffing on ref tunes. All right, and I drew a Marcellus earlier from Kyrie. So like for me, I kind of like the laid back conversation side of things, because if I had any like one of you guys on, like if you're doing a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo and I have you on, then it'd be like this intense. So tell me about your metaphysical thoughts on the roots of storytelling and how it relates to page 23, you know, because I really, what I found for interviewing is if I read like everything the person's put online, then I have tons of questions for them, because the more you read of someone, it's like the more interesting ideas they've introduced to you potentially.
Right.
I've got a metaphysical storytelling thing for you. I'll just
all right.
Out there. You guys tell me what you think about this. Though this is like a theory, and I didn't come up with it. I read it in a book somewhere. But if you've got your main cast of characters who this goes for, you know, kind of more long form storytelling approaches, but you need each of your characters to present the strengths that contrast the other character's weaknesses, I guess. So that's where the conflict comes in. Yeah,
I've noticed that theme. I think good writers will tap into that theme on purpose, and I think some people will just sort of naturally tap into that. Maybe related to that. So what that sparks for me is I've also noticed there's a great tendency in storytelling for the character's strength to be their weakness. Like, not to be political, but I'll get political. I think that's Donald Trump, right? Like his strength is his weakness, is that he'll say anything and he'll fight with anybody, which is great. Is great because he'll fight with jerks, and is terrible because then he'll pick a fight with. Like Ben Shapiro says, he's a hammer in search of a nail, and sometimes he'll hit a nail, and sometimes he'll hit a baby. I think like a lot of good characters, their very good qualities will kind of mirror or reflect their bad qualities. So they'll be courageous, but they'll also be foolhardy, that kind of a thing.
Yeah. And I think that's like another way, that's probably a better way of saying that the character is broken in a way and is trying to compensate for that brokenness by trying to patch itself up with its own broken behavior, which is nice. So if you can figure out a plot that leads towards that character thinking it's trying to get what it wants, but really gets what it needs, I guess, by getting that brokenness resolved in some way, or maybe just exposed and it's a tragedy and they all die. Kind of what good storytelling wise.
I'm trying to think, because maybe another, I don't know if this relates, but it may be kind of like an alternate angle on it, is what if their character arc relates to like the, you know, physical action adventure side of it, right? So they've got to learn to get tough to beat up the bad guy, right? So that's the action adventure side of it. But they're also learning like character traits as they, you know, train for their important mission. I think it's really interesting if like their physical problem they have to overcome is closely related to their moral problem they have to overcome.
Oh, I think you're nailing it. I think we're reading the same books.
Yeah. Oh, and I got this actually from a marketing guy. What was his name? Hold on a second. His website is called Story Brand, and he actually applies it all to like businesses. Okay, Donald Miller. I read some Donald Miller for my marketing job, and so he'll like talk about like he'll say the plot of Star Wars is basically the same as the plot of Moneyball. And then he'll show like really good political campaign ads and really good commercials. And he'll say, here's why this commercial actually sells the product. And here's why this funny, silly commercial doesn't sell the product. And it's because the good commercials actually have a narrative to them.
Yeah, yeah. There's a beginning, middle, and end with a nice, satisfying conclusion, I guess, at the end.
And actual characters. So like Geico and Old Spice use comedic marketing, right? Like they do the most zany thing they can think of to get people to share it. But they don't. But there's no like story to their ads. Like I don't walk away. But I guess the Old Spice commercial is effective because I think of it when I think of zany, silly commercial. But I've never thought I must get Old Spice because it will fulfill this specific need, and I will be a heroic, manly man when I get Old Spice. Right? That's a bit more of like the subtle, sophisticated, almost manipulative side of everything. Like I don't really have a moral problem. I think with using storytelling in the context of advertising, as long as you're truthful about your product. But it is almost it's a little creepy how susceptible we are to narrative. Like it can really affect the way we think and make decisions about buying anything.
I like to think, I mean, maybe marketing works more on me than I realize. That's probably true, actually.
Yeah.
I like to think I'm pretty callous to that stuff. Like when marketing does really poorly, like when it struggles valiantly and fails, I feel like I'm more likely to pay attention to it than when it looks really glossy and expensive and works too well on me. I think I'll kind of put my beard. When there's like a local ad for a used car salesman.
Yeah.
I'll tune in. I'll say, oh, look at this guy. He's just trying to sell some cars. But yeah.
It's Crazy Ed and his used car import. Yeah. Paul, let's see here. You said, I'm trying to remember. You said you worked as a printmaker. You were forced to work as a freelance illustrator. Did you work in the marketing? Did you work in the design or the advertising field at all?
No, not at all.
Okay.
I tried to stay as far away from that as I could because I know that's not one of my strengths.
It is almost like a different box of the brain. I think like when I was getting my job, I pretty much. What my boss said is, I like that you're a creative person, but you kind of get that the whole point of the ad is to sell the product. Like I feel like you wouldn't take a month making the ad look artistic; you'd make the ad look effective.
Right. Yeah, that's not my that's not the way my brain works.
So maybe
I don't know if I could do that.
Maybe on the less capitalist side of things, what are some artists who I should be checking out who I've somehow missed? Are there any like projects you guys are really excited about that you've been following recently?
Oh, Matt?
Oh, geez. I mean, what got me into comics was the indie stuff, honestly. So, but it's been a minute since I've.
Yeah.
Paul, you take it. I'm going to run over to my bookshelf for a second.
Okay. Well, I haven't really been following much of anything. I mean, just the Bigfoot Bill was the most recent thing that I was following. I don't. Like if I pick up something to read, it's usually like one of my reformer books or something.
Yeah.
But actually I don't even have time to do that. So I mainly just do all my reading through audiobooks.
Yep.
So I haven't really been following much of anything.
I'm guessing you kind of like heard about Comicsgate maybe tangentially through like following Doug TenNapel, because
I hear the word Comicsgate, but I still have no idea what it is.
Don't worry. I was like one of the old channels involved with it, and I've like given up trying to explain because it's a hashtag, right? Like people forget that the whole point of a hashtag is you use it to like signal boost a message.
Yeah.
But then once it becomes a thing, then it becomes like this meta thing, like who is Comicsgate? Who isn't Comicsgate? What are the principles of Comicsgate? Wait a second. None of us agree on anything. We just agree that we don't like this one thing. So do we have a move? Right? So like I think my very first video on Comicsgate was like, don't use Comicsgate, use hashtag comics. Yeah, so I'm not gonna rehash all that, but I totally understand. What was weird was I knew of Doug TenNapel, and then Comicsgate people started cheering him because he was getting all this grief on Twitter because he'd like talk about his Christian views, right? And there are people who want to like destroy his life and see him in a homeless shelter because of that. so then that got him kind of like on the radar of Comicsgate people, which is a bit, I guess it's a bit like a broader culture war thing. Like if cartoon Calvinist Twitter is kind of like a really tiny niche of Twitter, then like Comicsgate seems to like, I don't know, it seems to be like the big dividing line between the two sides of the culture war for like the regular comic book internet world. But you know what? Who knows how big a deal that is outside of Twitter, right? Like I bet a lot of people go to the comic book shop and they read a bunch of comic books and may hear about some of this stuff through the grapevine, but they don't care, you know, who's suing who.
Right.
Yeah, they're not paying attention. I got some recos.
Nice. Okay, I might present.
Man, okay, so Lu Yin Pham
Uh-huh.
is I think she's like Filipino or something. I was into her when she was doing children's books, and then she branched into comics. She did like a Prince of Persia book.
Yeah.
Like
I have that one, yeah.
Oh, you did? Yeah. Yeah, it's incredible. It's incredible. It's insane. I don't understand the story at all. But I feel the story, if that makes sense. It's very emotionally compelling, and it's got some adult drama, which is crazy for someone who just, you know, draws books for 8-year-olds for her career normally. But her stuff is really good. And Last Man by I don't know. He's one of these guys that has like a, you know, I don't know what his government name is, but Balak, I guess. It's like insane, like Fist of the North Star meets like French. I don't know. It's really weird looking.
Yeah.
But it's like a kid that, you know, he wants to fight in a this like professional fighting tournaments, and then he gets this weird has-been guy who's actually really talented, but he's also a drunk and a sleaze to teach him, and he hits on his mom. And then they, you know, and they work it out, and he ends up doing well in the comic in the tournament. You know, each like a different competition, I guess. I like how he spots his blacks in a weird way. I don't know, it's just strange looking. You know, if it's French, I'm probably gonna like it. But
yeah, kind of like it's like he's breaking down the structure of the character down to just a few simple shapes and lines.
Yeah, and I think he has a day job in animation or something, so he understands stuff. And then Gene Luen Yang's Boxers and Saints.
That's my favorite work by his. Yeah.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, you know, it's great.
I read his.
It's stiff, but it's he knows how to tell a story, you know, and he knows how to take his time to tell it.
Yeah.
Is he the one that wrote American Born Chinese?
Yep.
Okay, that was pretty good. Yeah.
Did you pick up on like the what was the Bible passage? Like the whole time, like the whole character of Sin Thao Se, I think it was actually supposed to be like a Catholic term for the name of God, and there was like an entire chapter of the Bible he paraphrased for that.
Oh my goodness.
What was it? Okay, that needs its own video, because I did a video where I mentioned that, but I didn't talk about it, and people didn't believe me. They just said, "Oh, I just thought it was about racism." Because if I go pick it up again, like if you just hold it side to side with the Bible passage, it's obvious that he's obviously drawing directly from Paul, I think.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, as far as I got was like realizing, oh wow, their mouths kind of line up.
Yeah. Well, Boxers and Saints, I like Boxers and Saints because that's a little bit more like I like war. I like people fighting each other more than I like stories about how I'm sad and I live in middle America, right? Like I like revolutions and death and despair and chaos and all that great stuff.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and he knows how to do both, which is cool. He gives you the human drama, and he gives you the action.
Yeah. I think he also wrote some of the Avatar, The Last Airbender comics, I think.
Yeah, I think he's just kind of moved on to just being a writer, I guess. He's cool. Yeah, and more power to him. I haven't read any of his stuff. I think he was writing some Marvel stuff, too.
All right, touchy question. What anime do you guys like? Because, Matt, I think you mentioned Fist of the North Star. Paul, are you an anime guy at all, or have you missed that boat?
Not really. Well, in high school, I used to watch like Dragon Ball Z and Gundam Wing.
Yeah.
But that was, I haven't really gotten into any of it now.
I feel like it has to hit you at the right time, or it has to be like more genre specific. Like I can't just sit down and watch an anime. I've got to watch an anime that's about something I'm interested in. Maybe it's like I'm past the point where, oh, it's cool because it's from Japan. Like I've got to be interested in the author, or there has to be something unique about the concept that makes it compelling, which is probably a good thing. Now I'm being a bit more discerning about it, you know?
Yeah. You can't be a weeaboo about it. Yeah. Honestly, I kind of noped out after the big naked dudes started coming up to that castle city and started eating everybody.
In which one? In Attack on Titan?
Attack on Titan.
Yeah, Attack on Titan. That was the last one I tried, and I feel bad because I always I wistfully look back at my anime days, and I'm like, maybe there's something still out there for me that's new.
I'm starting to get to the point where I like manga better than anime, because it always feels like they crank them out so fast, and it even seems to have become standard that they're literally just taking like panel for panel for all the shots inspiration. So that means I can read a manga in the time it would take me. It take me like a day to read it, and that would be like 6 seasons worth of anime, right? Like I just don't have the time. I don't have the time for anime anymore.
Yeah, that's a good way to efficiently go about it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of more inspiring because it's one, or is it one person often with manga?
That blew my mind. It isn't. They just don't credit them. They almost all of them have studio assistants who help them out. I think the guy doing the Naruto sequel was a studio assistant for Kishimoto. And so he'd do the important little background details. And so when Kishimoto is ready to retire and wants to tap someone to keep drawing his comics, then that's who he taps. So I've only just recently, in the past year, I've noticed it become more normal for them to have a page where they thank all of their assistants. And it's usually every assistant does one thing really good. Like one is in charge of hands and one is in charge of background. So I really want them to do that in the West, because we need a much healthier comic book industry to make that feasible. But what ends up happening is you end up learning from one of the best in the industry, right? It's like an old Renaissance studio system kind of deal. And you get you make these great connections.
Yeah. And it helps you focus on your strengths and make those into even more strengths, I guess, until your weaknesses aren't so weak, I guess, and you can handle more of a project on your own.
Underworld Dream says art assistant equals art slave. I wouldn't deny it.
Especially in Japan, I'm sure.
So what did you say they have one person just to draw the hands?
It's usually something specific they're good at. That was probably an exaggeration. It'd probably be more background characters. I'm trying to think of what I forgot the guy who worked for Kishimoto, but it would be things like draw this giant crowd of people who are in the background and aren't that important. Help me draw, like Naruto's clone. So I'll draw the most important Naruto, but you'll draw the clones of Naruto off in the side. So the main artist takes the most important jobs and he lets his assistants or slaves draw the boring parts or the background detail parts that take up a lot of time.
Okay. So now it's something I've always wondered. It's kind of a bunny trail, but is there So is there like a set style that if it's not this, then it's not anime? Like that there's no room for like creative, like gestural type drawings and stuff like that.
Right. Right. Okay. I've been thinking about this a lot. I think that the West still has a bit more variety than the Japanese market, but I definitely do see artists who deviate from the norm. I think most of the stylistic, everything is uniform, everything looks the same, are in kind of like the big genres that usually target like a specific market. Like almost every Shonen Jump comic has similar tropes because they are trying to make battle stories for 13-year-old boys, right? Okay. And a lot of shoujo will have similar tropes because they're trying to make, you know, little romances for 13-year-old girls. So if you look only within one genre, I think you'll see kind of a lot of the same thing over and over again. But if you zoom back, I've got this whole thesis that the Western comics and the Japanese comics market continue the theme of all of art history, which is stylistic development, pushing a style to its extreme, rejecting those extremes, and then introducing an alternative extreme as a rejection of the old idea. Boy, you said, yeah, that was one heck of a bunny trail you set me down on.
Sorry.
And also, there's different companies that I'll wrap this up for you. There's different companies that also kind of like the Samurai 7 was like one that I kind of think of that as a company they kind of did something different.
Yeah,
kind of
Gonzo, right?
As you go, there's a few of them out there that do things that are different. But it's just like I bet it's like learning Japanese. Like Japanese just sounds like Japanese until you learn it, and then once you learn it, you're like, oh, that's a regional dialect.
Yeah,
starts sounding more diverse.
It's kind of like Marvel comics are an interesting thing, but they're not the only thing in like the Western comics world. Like if you just don't like superheroes and you want to get into comics, well, don't read a bunch of Marvel comics. You don't like superheroes. Do you like mysteries? Right. Okay, go read some mystery comics. You can find something that floats your boat in comics, which has always been I like comics, period, and I like to hop from genre to genre. But it's always impressed me like how much weird stuff or unique stuff you can find in any genre you can think of.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
We got to review like the Bible manga sometime. See what we think of some of those.
Yeah. I'd be down for that.
Yeah.
Okay, let me float an idea past you guys that I've been thinking about for years. I guess the thought I had years ago was, wait a second, we have like about 9,000 illustrated Bibles, right? But we don't have a single illustrated like the Athanasius versus the Arian heresy, right? Like how come the Christian church hasn't made like a single comic book adaptation of the life of Athanasius yet? And I guess it's kind of like a crotchety old man thought, I guess, but I'd be really interested in seeing like, I don't know if this would be like a collaborative thing that a bunch of Christian comic artists would have to do, or maybe a more individual focused thing. I've always been interested to see if there's I think there's been a revival of interest in the culture by Christians since kind of like the fundamentalist era of the 90s. I've always been interested to see if that would like maybe take off in Christians, maybe not just making, like cringy God's Not Dead style art, but kind of like taking, I don't know, tapping into all the richness of Christian history for a new generation, which I have no idea what the question is in there, but I have a feeling that both of you must at least have some thoughts on that, because it kind of gets to the root of like, where does our Christian faith intersect with the products we make for the culture? I don't know, does anything I say resonate with either of you guys?
I don't know. I think that sounds like Paul up and down.
Yeah. I mean, this is stuff that I've been thinking about a lot lately. It's just, I read these like creeds and confessions, and I just think, how would I illustrate something like this?
Exactly.
That would be just a fun, to me, I think that would be a really fun project to work on. It's just like one thing I've had in the back of my mind. It's like illustrating the 1689 confession, which I think would be a lot of fun. I did one little Reftoon comic about that of like the first part.
Well, okay.
You got to do the origin story. You got to do Westminster first.
Right. Yeah.
You can do the sequel after.
The sequel.
Sorry, I'm the only Presbyterian here.
That's all right.
Yeah, you've had some spicy Baptist memes I've seen. So Paul, yeah, you're really clicking with me here. Where was I going with that? I guess what I was thinking about was like the other aspect of it I'm thinking about is like YouTube and the podcast era, where people want to listen to things, right? Like who has time to read anymore? They listen to audiobooks or they listen to videos on interesting historical subjects. So I've always felt like I don't know, maybe this is like a Scott McCloud kind of thing. Like Scott McCloud anticipated that comics would kind of break out of the traditional form and kind of like become more consistent with like the way the internet is designed. He's got this whole weird thesis on it, but I've always kind of envisioned maybe something like the Bible Project, where they do very straightforward, very beautifully animated kind of explanations of each Bible book. Yeah, like I've been doing like these fairy tale videos where I just will record a fairy tale and present, you know, the historical illustrations with it. I'd love to do that for some of the kind of like the same, you know, like 1689 confession that Paul was talking about, right? Like there are all of these great materials from our history that would be really interesting to represent in this new format that's opened up for us.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's yeah.
And I think as people are consuming content kind of haphazardly and non-linearly, I guess, and visually, I feel like, I mean, just like what Paul's doing, but I'm sure there's other ways too. I feel like I only know Paul. He's figured it out. He's like, actually, the hammer is hitting the nail.
The hammer is.
But yeah, there's got to be a way to just kind of virally, simply but effectively, kind of package historical content for 2019. You know.
Yeah.
We already consume stuff.
So maybe like this pulls like I like went whole hog into Confiscate, right? Like that's why I made like this Twitter and this YouTube channel. I was never like I never like put up the banner and said I am Comicsgate. You know, you all do what I say. But I was always interested in it, and one of the things I learned from it is like all of these consumers were able to kind of like band together and promote one another and really create a viable platform for someone like an Ethan Van Sciver or a John Malin to take their work directly to people who are interested in their comic book work. I don't think you can like wait around for like an organization to come along and say, hey, artists, let's make a, I don't know, kind of organized cartoon church history thing together. I think it takes a lot of individual interest. Like you as an individual artist have to be interested in that stuff, but I do think it'd be really good for us to network more and, you know, like reach out to artistically inclined people who have that on mind, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
Networking. I'm sorry. So the point I was trying to make is that networking is like the golden opportunity that like the internet has offered us really in our age.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It allows people to, communities to bubble up, which is nice. And I guess that's to some people it's a curse and to some people it's a blessing. The like radical, democratization that I guess media, the online access has given us, especially social media. It's really fun, but it comes with its challenges too, I guess. And some people like it, some people don't. Like I said, but taking advantage of it is a good thing.
I think I want to show you guys what I've been sketching in the background here. So let's see if I do my fifth face reveal in a week. Let's see here. Make sure my social security number isn't over there. All right. So here's what I doodled for Kyrie.
That's so fun.
Nice.
Here's what I doodled from looking at Reftoons. So Spurgeon is just fun. Spurgeon should be a cartoon character, like a big fat bearded guy with cigars and pithy quotes. That is just like so British. I love it.
He is a cartoon character. He's just reading him. He's so funny sometimes.
I think
and so serious.
And I think Apologia Radio had, I call him Apologia because that's the way James White pronounces it. But they told the story that he used the Bible. He invited his future wife to study the Bible with him, and kind of suggested he was interested in her that way. So he's an interesting character romantically too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Paul, do you have any comment on how you find the people you want to you've mentioned that you read, or if you don't have time to read anymore, then you use Audible to listen to some of these guys. How do you pick out what kind of quote is juicy enough to make a Ref Tunes out of?
What kind of quote is juicy enough? Let's see. Hold on, let me take a drink here. Sorry. I don't know. That's a good question. They usually just it's usually just something that creates a mental image for me that I think would make a good cartoon. I don't know. I mean, I do sometimes try to find quotes that may be a little controversial just to throw something out there, which probably not the greatest thing to do, but I don't know. I like a lot of the Puritans because they have a lot of word pictures that they play with, and there's a lot of emotion. They have especially John Owen. He's got a lot of emotion behind what he writes, and so with him, it's really easy to, well, not easy, I guess, but it's he creates these really good pictures, especially with killing sin and stuff like that. I mean, there's such it's kind of like how John Bunyan would take these words and personify them, like faithful, hopeful, Christian, and you can kind of do that with John Owen. I'll just take him as an example. With sin, all these sins, you can kind of personify them, and that makes a really good visual story when you can personify an idea and have it come across, have it be readable as that idea, but also see it as the personification. But I don't know if that makes sense.
It does. Okay, so what you're reminding me of is how Sproul will talk about a pastor's job, or what he'd encourage his students to do is try to find the drama in the text. So an artist's job is to try to find the human emotion we connect with as artists. And but both of you have this interest of history in your work, and I think what's clicked for me is that when you appreciate history, when you appreciate the human emotional side of history becomes more than just a bunch of useless facts about dead people. It becomes this living thing where you start to appreciate these are our predecessors. They had the same kind of emotions and struggles that we did, and a lot of them sacrificed to leave a better world for us. Right? It really kind of when you appreciate history, you don't just memorize, regurgitate a bunch of facts about it. It becomes this really kind of living thing to you, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And for me, that's how I learn things better, is not just by reading off a bunch of facts and trying to memorize them, but by really getting into the character of the people that I'm reading about, and understanding who they were, and the different struggles that they faced and stuff. I don't know. I just find that more interesting than just facts.
That's one of the things I try to think about a lot. I feel like there's two ways. There's a bad and a good way to go about trying to tell a story from a historical perspective. I think the instinct for people is to dig in to a period and just immediately try to mine it for relevancy for today. and then just kind of turn it to an allegory of like, I don't know, turn it to a mirror of, uh, this looks just like you, basically.
So would you say that Rome kind of offers you that opportunity in Kyrie?
Well, it's neat because Roman Empire, as far as I think of it, is kind of like the first foundations of the modern world, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they really kind of thought of themselves that way too. So that kind of helps. There's a lot of similarities, but I feel like the deeper and the better way to get to know a period and to tell a better story through it that's actually more relatable is you got to spend a lot of time getting to know the differences
Yeah.
and being comfortable with them and learning how to like reading their own literature and their own stories to get to know like how they thought of things, what they thought was good and bad about their own culture, like how they critiqued themselves instead of just starting with critiquing them.
Which is a way of saving you from having like 21st century woke kids in ancient Rome, right?
Yeah, yeah. So then you can play with you can once you get to know the differences and you can relate to them, you can empathize with where they're sitting and maybe kind of see like how you might have turned out differently if you would, were born then as opposed to now.
Mm.
Then you can kind of point yourself backwards to today because your audience is today and you're today, of course, and then you can kind of tell a story that makes more sense that it does bridge that gap. But first, you got to spend a lot of time. You can't just look down on the differences. You got to really you got to empathize with them so that your audience empathizes with those differences.
Not just think of like ancient people as stupid people who didn't know what we know in magic science land, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally. Like yeah, like for instance, like so there's Marcus, there's Marcellus, and then there's Myra. They're kind of the two main protagonists. And and she's a female, kind of jewel thief. And as far as I know, there's never been you know, I don't think female jewel thieves got very far career wise in the third century. But that feels like a modern trope, like worked back into an ancient period. But I tried to get to know the period first so that I could figure out how something like that could work if I wanted to do that. And I feel like it kind of naturally happens because the way she deals with the world of that she's grown up in is she can actually get away with more because people don't expect as much from women at that period as they would now. So she's less suspicious so long as she can play her. But she's kind of like she has a lot of leadership but not strength is kind of how I think of it. And then Marcus has a lot of strength but not leadership. So she knows how to sly her way in and out of situations that actually kind of makes sense for the period, I guess, at least for like a young adults.
And you gave her like a dose of common sense, right? Like I think that helps any character is if you give them a dose of common sense, like it may like play down some of their foibles, but it like every character reads better if they behave in a situation in a way like that doesn't make you want to yell at them, right? Like her trying to weed in. I don't remember which issue it was, but when the Roman soldiers noticed that the colors are down because the Thunder Brothers just said, "Oh, well, we thought they wouldn't notice us if we took the colors down," and then she tries to wheedle them out of the situation much more effectively than the Thunder Brothers do. But even then, it didn't work. So she does have a lot more common sense than the Thunder Brothers, but she encounters failure. She encounters problems that she can't just like bluff her way out of.
Yeah, and that goes to the whole the theory I read about in some book about you gotta figure out what their needs are and how they conflict with their desires and how she tries to solve problems through sexuality among other things because that's the world that she's living in. That's how people have defined her. So she's projecting that back onto the world. So lying to get what she wants and often by trying to seduce people is she thinks it's an effective strategy, but it just gets her into more trouble.
For Marcellus, forgive me if I'm reading onto him, but is there any inspiration from Bruce Banner's character for Marcellus? Because I kind of just noticed the pattern of like a gentle giant.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, that's part of the fun too. Is and I mean, this goes back. Honestly, this goes back to my anime days of liking like a ragtag group of characters with extreme differences
Yeah.
that have to work together. That I don't know. You just see in anime more than you see in Western stories. But yeah, like so his weakness, his desire is for no one to ever get hurt. But that conflicts with his ability, which is to like I guess to be superhuman in strength and to easily be able to kill everyone if his anger takes over. So his need is really to resolve his anger and really the source of that strength, I guess, which is kind of a supernatural metaphor for an emotional issue, I guess. But I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it makes sense to me. Like I
Yeah.
never like to say this character equals this other character, but after when I thought of Bruce Banner while reading him, then I thought, well, yeah, but he also has his own. I think every great storyteller, draws from what they've known about since they were a child. Like every creative work is a remixing of what came before, and then your creativity comes in how you package it, how you represent it, how you maybe what you add that's relevant today, kind of like in that tradition. Like my favorite illustration is one of my art teachers called it the cauldron of story, and the cauldron of story was like this soup that people had been adding ingredients to for thousands of years, and every artist got to sip from the cauldron of story and add their own ingredients to the cauldron of story.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah,
that sounds like something Paul should draw. Sounds cool.
A cauldron of story.
It's like stone soup, but it's fictional.
Yeah, because that was really about that was a pretty good. I remember liking that as a kid.
I love stone soup, and that's one of like the great. Not only is it like a fun kind of Bugs Bunny style fairy tale, it's also got like that kind of interesting metaphor to it. I don't know.
Yeah, wasn't the whole thing like everyone is reading into, I guess, the power of storytelling? Like the person making the stone soup convinced everyone.
Yep.
Really
yeah,
good.
and so then they were willing to share their food and add to the soup after he persuaded them that the stone soup needs just a few extra ingredients. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if you guys know this, but I love fairy tales. I've been reading all of these obscure ones, trying that like. My favorite are these Czechoslovakian fairy tales because no one's ever like done anything with them before. There've been no like Disney style kids books about them, but then this author writes these really interesting Christian metaphors, and some of them are like really creepy or really sad. So I've really been enjoying. Bozhenia Nemtsova is her name, and I'm really impressed by her.
You could do you should do like a modern retelling. There's a lot of podcasts that do that sort of thing. But
yeah. I've been thinking about that. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to illustrate good fairy tales I find where there are no illustrations, because I do like to kind of present the historical ones because I feel like, they have a special connection to the original story. But I've got some great Chinese fairy tales that do not have good illustrations. So I think I've picked up the first one I want to illustrate myself. Yeah.
There you go.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. Maybe we can collaborate.
Yes. So 100%. That is my favorite thing about like comics Twitter and comics YouTube is like all the people you can find to work with. I've been thinking about how with YouTube kind of being what it is, like what I've told everybody who's asked me about should I start a YouTube channel is start a YouTube channel if you are convinced you can make work without getting paid for at least a year and you would still be happy. Or actually don't start a YouTube channel if you could make work forever and be happy not getting paid to do it. And that's how you're going to be able to kind of like make work that will eventually get you paid down the road, is because you'll actually be passionate about the work and that passion will show. I think there's a way where artists, because they keep talking about how like YouTube is rigged against animators and YouTube makes it hard for like independent artists to build any kind of platform on YouTube. So I've always thought that, like a group of people might be able to make content, at a more steady rate than like, one person in their basement can,
Oh yeah,
Probably.
definitely.
Yeah.
And you can get to know, and like we said before, like YouTube's all about getting to know the artist as much as it is about, maybe more so than getting to know the art. So collaborating, like networking, is about, I guess, cross pollinating personalities, I guess, and
Hmm.
that sort of thing, as much as it is about the art itself and ideas, like marketing ideas, just creative ideas, inspiration ideas, that sort of thing. I mean, that's what really gets me excited when I find a YouTuber who isn't just an island, but is part of a chain of people who are getting to know each other and getting to know their audience, and there's an interactivity of ideas going on. And I feel like, oh, I got to tune in like today because I'm gonna fall off the wagon of ideas. That's what gets me excited.
Yeah, I enjoy seeing a group of people talking about something because they bring their own different experiences to whatever they're talking about. And just to me, a variety of people talking is a lot more interesting than just listening to one person talk the whole time.
Definitely.
More dimensions. That's something that I think podcasts. That's probably why podcasts are kind of waning, because I think they were kind of solo mediums for so many years,
Hmm.
and people are um, moving to other platforms to find something that feels more social. I think more dynamic.
Maybe related to that, Paul, I should invite you to this. I had Matt on for a group of artists where we all drew Sporkman for Chuck, the co-creator of Sporkman, has been a guest on my channel a few times. That's something I'd like to continue doing. Like, have a guest on who's trying to fund a project, and then get a bunch of artists to like compete and draw the character. Because I have a feeling you could definitely add like your own unique spin to that, because you've got a really solid cartoon construction style.
Yeah, that would be fun. It sounds like a really fun idea.
Excellent.
Yeah, I second that. It was a blast. It was fun.
Wonderful. Well, let's see. We've been going for over an hour. I do want to get up early tomorrow, so I'd like to give both of you a chance to like pitch your work and give us any closing thoughts you'd like to share. Matt, why don't you start us?
Okay. So Kyrie is Indiana Jones in ancient Rome. It's kind of a sword and sandal, Lawrence of Arabia kind of adventure, supernatural elements, things of that sort. It's fun. Got a lot of character drama. I've been working on it for about 3 years now, maybe a little more, and I'm probably about halfway through. So there's a lot going on, and you can check it out on Webtoons. I update that on a weekly basis, and I'm coming out with issues about once every other month, and those are on Amazon or Kindle and Comixology.
And I've linked to your Comiker Press site, which links to a few of those places where people can get it.
Oh yeah, that's the main hub. So my publisher is Comiker.
And Paul, tell us where people can find your work.
All right. Well, Reftoons is it's a comic strip based in like church history, and you can find that at reftoons.com. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Reftoons. So if you just type in Reftoons, you'll find it. I also have this other comic of mine that I'm trying to resurrect, Dad versus Nature. It's about my life as a father, and I've got some new ideas for some strips coming up. So that can be found at paulcoxillustration.com. I don't have a Dad versus Nature site for that. And also on Facebook, Dad versus Nature.
Excellent. And I've read Dad versus Nature, very fun, kind of like, family comedy. Reftoons, it's not just a Calvin and Hobbes style. I think you are kind of evoking the idea of Bill Watterson style, but you definitely have your own unique way of constructing really solid cartoon characters. So two great artists. I was glad to have you both on. So sorry for kind of like creep on. I've been like Twitter stalking you since I knew you from back in my old days on Twitter from years ago. So it was great to have you both on. I was really interested to hear you guys talking about like.
Hey, can I ask you one more question before we go?
Yeah.
Are you willing to dox your alt account?
Sure. I'm willing to dox one of them. Yeah, I was Calvinus Servetus.
Oh, really?
Oh.
Yeah. So I would do all those jokes about me being on fire as Calvinus Servetus.
Oh, nice. Oh my gosh! All right, time to stalk your alt account.
I ran out of gags, so that's one of the reasons why I moved on.
Yeah.
All right. You guys both have an open invitation to come back on this channel anytime you are promoting your comic work or any crowdfunding work. I'd love to have you back on. We could do an independent like interview style, or we could have a few more guests who are interested in your work, or we could do the what I did for Sporkman and just have like a big gaggle of artists and everybody will draw your character. So you both have an open invite, and I will be following your work closely in the future.
Awesome.
Cool, thanks.
Sounds good. Thanks.
On here, so thanks.
And thank you both for joining. So with that, I'm #1 Marmaduke fan. My guests have been Matt C. and Paul Cox, and links to their social media and their websites are in the description below. So thank you to everyone in the chat, and we'll catch you later.